Good evening, and thank you for being here. Welcome. This is the College Drive and Highway 19 project discussion tonight. My name is Gene East. I'm the project manager for the project with MnDOT. I'm in the Wilmer office. Thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate your time. Come out and help us talk through some learning about the Highway 19 project and gather your input. Later in the evening, you're going to hear more from many of our group here, MnDOT and our consultants, SEH. And in that, they'll be telling you a lot more about the project and process that we'll be working through tonight. My task today, right now, though, is the briefest of introductions to tell you a little bit about why we're here and where we are on the project, and set the context, if you will, for tonight's discussion. So, the Highway 19 project, the College Drive project, to those you locals, is still a Highway 19 to us. It's in its very, very early stages of development. It's actually a 2025 project, so it's just barely getting off the ground. And so there's many things we do not know about that project and how it's going to be exactly. There's a lot of detail that we don't know yet. However, there are a few things that we do know about that project. And one of those really important things that we do know is that it is a major project. It is a major reconstruction, and it will go from Bruce Street, or 4th Street, down in the south and west, up to Bruce Street on the north and east. So it's a major project through that whole area. So in that, when we have a project of that magnitude, we need to come out and find out, we need to talk to you and find out what are the important things that we don't necessarily know about this project. And so in that, we're here. We're here to gather your input and learn about the project. And in that, the process that we use in these early stages is all about public engagement and how we will be working with you to learn about the project and learn about what you would like in the project and share that information. And so as we do that, one of the things that we do as we head into this public engagement process is we are really committed. MnDOT and the City of Marshall are really committed to keeping the engagement process going with you, to learn more about your needs for the project and what we intend to do. So in that, we develop what we call a promise to the public. And this might seem a little bit formal or perhaps even a little bit stuffy, but I do want to walk through this promise to the public with you, for you, so that you understand fully how engaged, what we're stepping into tonight, in fact, that engagement process. And again, this might seem just a little bit stuffy, but I actually want to read this to you and walk through this with you to really reinforce our commitment. MnDOT and the City of Marshall are committed to engaging with the citizens of the Marshall area to clearly understand the concerns, priorities, and aspirations of the community. We will listen and account for the community's input while considering the improvement options for the project. And we will provide feedback to the community on how their input, today your input, will influence project decisions. That's our commitment to you, and this is step one of that commitment. And so we thank you again for your participation, and I'm going to turn it over now to Nikki Farrington from SEH to begin more about the project and process.
Thank you, Gene. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So I was just going to do a quick run through of kind of what we're talking about when we talk about this reconstruction project. So like Gene mentioned, the limits right now are between 4th Street, so down by the Armory or Legion Park. And it runs up through Main Street all the way to Bruce Street. So you can see it's quite the corridor that we're going to be talking about here tonight. And of course, we've got maps in front of you. Feel free to write on those maps. We want to hear everything and pointing out things. One of the questions is definitely very location specific, so use those maps. They're there for you to use to share with us your discussion points. And as Jean said, we're starting early here. This construction is not planned until 2025, but the next couple of years are all about making sure that we implement a project that the community can be proud of. Again, this is a project that's going to last for 50 years, so we want to make sure it's right. And so again, thanks everyone here for being here to help us form that vision. So when we talk about these improvements, what are we talking about? We're talking about roadway improvements, obviously everything between the curves. So we're looking at turn lanes, we're looking at lane widths, anything else that might be on the roadway. We're talking about intersection improvements, that we have existing signals today. Is there other places we should be considering signals? Are there other places we should be looking at something different? So what are we talking about? We're looking at traffic control at those intersections. We're looking at multimodal improvements. Are there places we can make improvements to sidewalks? Is there curb ramps that maybe need to be fixed or to be ADA compliant? The city's looking at what they should be looking at for utility improvements. Obviously, some of their utilities are aging through the corridor. Where should they be making improvements for their utilities? And then we're also looking at drainage improvements. So again, we're thinking about these questions we're going to be asking you tonight. Kind of think that it's not just the road, it's kind of everything around that road and everything kind of within that MnDOT right-of-way that will be part of this reconstruction project. I'm going to hand it over to Mandy. Talk a little bit more about logistically how this is going to work tonight.
And there will be a quiz on all of our names. So my name is Mandy Schmidt. I work for MnDOT out of the Wilmer office, District 8, and I do engagement. So my job is to work with the public and to try to get as many folks from the public involved in our projects as possible. So tonight we're going to do something called the World Cafe, and I don't want to get too hung up on that name, but really what it means is that you're going to be sitting at tables, you're going to be having small group discussions, and then we're going to bring all of your feedback together and we're going to start trying to build consensus as much as possible. So you'll see this and Chris is going to facilitate this process. But what we're trying to do is find some common ground. We're just starting this project, and so we really want to know where your priorities are so that we can carry that through in the decisions that we make. We're going to have 2 questions tonight. Hopefully, if time allows, we do have a third question. We'll see how efficient you are with your time, so we'll be monitoring that. But again, we're going to focus on those 2 main questions.
Great, thanks Mandy. Again, my name is Chris Heinecker with SEH. Before we start table conversations, I want to spend just another minute giving a few more details about the flow and format for the rest of the evening. Shortly we'll put a question up on the screen. I'll talk through the question a little bit, and then we'll break into our table discussions for about 15 minutes. And during that, there's a table host at each table. That person will start recording the comments being expressed at each table on the yellow posted sheets. And after 15 minutes, we'll call the group back together. And then we'll start the exercise of going table by table, and each host will come up and summarize the comments that were collected during the conversation. And then we'll start to do some grouping. As we go to the next table, we'll probably start hearing some common themes. And we'll start putting those together so people can see and start responding to, as you would like, kind of what you're seeing going up on the board. So that's going to be the basic process. That'll take about 20 to 25 minutes, the table reports. After that, we'll take about a 5-minute break and ask everybody to shift tables and hopefully mix up as well as you can. Grab some more beverages or pizza if you'd like. And then we'll go to question number 2 in the same process. So that's the basic format. As Mandy mentioned, if time allows, we do have a third question. We'll probably let you know partway through that second question conversation whether or not we think we have enough time. So any questions about the process before we start?
Chris, do you just want to mention casual bathrooms, food,
Yeah, so we have the bathrooms across the hall on the left. And again, anytime you want, it doesn't need to be during the break. This is very informal. Get up and grab another slice of pizza. It looks like we've got about 10 pizzas left, so we got some work to do on the pizza. And beverages, and again, as over these conversations, just feel free to raise your hand, and let's have some good conversation tonight. So, the first question, get back so we can see this. So what does a good roadway corridor look like? And maybe a little context with this one. as you've driven around the area, the state, the country, and you reflect on some of the different roads you traveled on, what are some of the characteristics of what you consider to be a more positive experience? Was it the look? Was it some aesthetics, the lighting? Was it that there was parking provided, or maybe there was no parking? I mean, what are the different elements that you can think of when you've driven different roadways that stand out to you? I kind of say, I kind of like that. I felt safe driving that road. What were those features? We would like to capture those. So that's the first question. Any questions about that? So the question was in town. I mean, it could be anything, but it's probably better to reflect on through communities, just from a context standpoint. But it can be anything that you can think of that is in your head and think that was a better road than the road I drove yesterday for what reasons. I'd like to capture that. So about 15 minutes, I'll give maybe a 2-minute warning, and then we'll start the group conversation. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to gather up back as a large group here and start reporting back to each table. Everybody could wrap up their conversation. Okay, so as we discussed earlier, what we do now is have a report back from each table. The table hosts will come up, do a quick summary of the comments on their post-it notes, and then we'll take those and start putting them on the board. And as we progress through this cycle, we'll start grouping up common themes. To start things off, so Jason will work counterclockwise.
Okay, so number one, for a good corridor, no potholes, no bumps, no manhole bumps, no manholes out the wheel paths. Number one, pretty good. Landscaping, good landscaping, plenty of trees, coordination of landscaping elements and lighting. Sidewalks, not right behind the curb, and have them.
Okay.
This one's pretty clear, no roundabouts.
Anything else need to be said there?
No extra notes on that one. Proper geometrics, we're kind of talked about, no skewed intersections, no good sight lines, no blind spots.
Okay.
Good gaps for side street traffic to get into the corridor. So gaps. Good signal spacing. It was kind of brought up in Marshall that Lyon, Maine, Saratoga are all close, and then Bruce is a long ways away. And then no on-street bike lanes. Off-street if room is available.
Here. Okay, so thank you, Jason.
So one of the things we talked about is that it should be beautiful. It should have trees, you should keep the parks and the statues that are there. Perhaps an alternate route for semis and oversized, overweight vehicles. And then make sure that it's accessible to all, including wheelchairs and pedestrians, so that you have safe crosswalks, the voice-activated ones, and make sure that there's good signage to alert drivers to pedestrians. Bicycle friendly, and educate everybody about the rules for sharing the roads. We didn't talk about roundabouts, but we talked about traffic control being clear, not confusing in any way. Not having any having unobstructed intersections. And good lighting, and include LEDs, something that's energy efficient, and avoid light pollution. So angling the lights so that they're not reflecting up into the sky. And make sure that the corridor is safe for drivers and pedestrians, that all the pavement is well kept.
so we talked about difficulty to make left turns off the side streets and just avoiding visual clutter, whether that's trees or parked cars. Concern about street width, where parking is present, and making sure that we have proper width so that you're comfortable getting out of your vehicle at those locations. Parking along the business corridor is desired, but maybe not so much along the residential corridor. Just a general comment of trying to limit speeds. We had a comment about just consistency through the project, whether that's, the lighting, sidewalk, and Spicer was brought up as a good example. Another comment about lighting throughout the corridor and how important it is to have well-lit streets. Comments about low maintenance plants or any of the aesthetics that get put out here. Don't want something that's going to look poor in a few years. Well-defined bike and ped routes, wherever those are chosen, just make sure that it's defined where you should be headed to. And then there was some concern about snow removal and making sure that we can try and have as much room to put that snow during the winter.
Okay. Thank you. Suzanne's next.
Okay, so our group talked about, one of the things was having safe crossings for school. In particular, mentioned Grace Life Elementary. There was a signal that had been removed at Whitney Street, and so, just like I said, making sure we're addressing pedestrian crossing safety. Overall, safety should be the top priority for the corridor, both for drivers and for pedestrians. A general statement. We talked about liking trees and other types of plantings, making the corridor look nice. Talked about no bike lanes, that there's other places in the community to bike on that are more appropriate with less traffic and probably a better options than on the highway. We also talked about having a boulevard between the road and the sidewalk, primarily for snow storage, that there's places for that to be accommodated. We didn't see kind of on-street parking as important. There's right now not a lot of space for it, and so again, we're focusing on off-street parking. And the group will talk about really liking just having the turn lanes, right turn lanes, left turn lanes along the corridor to facilitate movement of traffic as well.
Great, thank you. So, what do we have here? Jesse.
Eric, how's that table going over there?
Okay, thank you.
So our group talked about a couple different things. We first started off with making traffic flow better at the Chicken's Foot, Armory Corner, maybe a roundabout, maybe a roundabout. Wider lanes and wider turn lanes. Maybe you can look at like a center left turn. Okay, yeah, so they can. Upgraded ADA pedestrian ramps and sidewalks. Traffic signals only in locations where they're deemed necessary. Reduce the large truck traffic. Maybe have like a truck route or something like that designated. Good sight lines at intersections. I think they brought up, there was, what street was that? Right there where we just redid the bridge. That bridge actually impedes your vision.
Yeah.
So. And the last thing we brought up was keep the bikes off.
Okay. Bikes. So we'll go next. Say just a comment I'll make too, while we're switching table votes. You'll notice that, for instance, on bikes, there could be a difference in there. Some of the bike comments might be very positive about having bike lanes. Some might say we don't want bikes on the road. That's okay. The purpose of this is to find out what are the major themes, what are on people's minds, whether it's bikes or sight lines, as we understand all that, and we'll figure out as we get further in the process about what are we hearing in terms of levels of support for different types of changes. So it's okay that we might look at some of these categories and go, it seems like they contradict a little bit. We'll get to that as we work through the process. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, good corridor has good intersection turning visibility, and we talked about turning off of Marshall Street as well. A good corridor has good pedestrian crossings at popular locations. Talked about a specific spot for that as well.
Okay.
It's nice when there's separation between the curb and the sidewalk, the flow of traffic. A good corridor has some trees or landscaping, some aesthetic value or character. Talked about a segment of the project corridor as well. And then providing on-street parking is important in some areas where it's popular to park, but in places where it seems to be seldom used, that space may be better utilized as a boulevard or something else. Sure. Was one comment.
Okay, great. Parking. Nikki is next.
I think our group was going for the most postcards. So you can just hold them. And
Yeah, we'll do that.
just so first one is easy snow removal, so it's limiting kind of what's on the sidewalks to make it easier to remove the snow. LED lighting. Considering access consolidations, there seems to be a lot of properties with multiple access that's not needed anymore. Wider sidewalk in general, just for pedestrians. There was a very adamant 4-lane comment. You want to see 4 lanes of, and also concrete for the roadway. These two go together, so turn lanes and specifically right turn lanes, but also left turn lanes are important. No hitching posts. So Main Street hitching posts, the bollards that are around those intersections. The consistency with design, so I think this goes with another comment that was out there about, with parking, but in some places but not others, and then how it breaks down. Wayfinding signs are important. Be able to figure out getting around. Like I said, we have a lot halfway through here. Sight lines, I know that's something we heard before about safety for sight lines, being able to see where we're going. Crosswalks for pedestrians. Again, buffer for the sidewalk. I've heard that multiple times tonight for having that boulevard space between the sidewalk and the road. Safe access, so again, having to do with being able to see and get out. So bikes on the sidewalks, not on the road. We had a no street parking along the corridor.
What was that one?
No street parking. Accommodate or lessen the truck traffic. So if we have to have them, make sure we can accommodate them. If we can eliminate or reduce them. Roundabout at the Chicken Foot intersection. Goes against the no roundabout table. Wherever that was. You guys might have to figure out when we switch here. You guys get at the same tables we're talking. And then a signal at Whitney.
So that's everybody, right? So any initial thoughts from the group? I mean, you can see there's several categories here, but there's a lot of, I guess I'll call it grouping or consolidation of some of the comments, some of the themes here. Which is fine. But there are details within here that as we start processing this information more, we'll get into those. We just want to kind of hopefully have this conversation tonight, and folks, when you leave, you get an understanding of what are some of those defining issues that will likely influence this process as we work through this in the next couple of years. With that, so we're at 6:25. Let's take about a 5-minute break, or it can be a little bit longer. And we're going to do the table shuffle. So I'd encourage people to mix things up as much as you can. Again, feel free to grab some more pizza, beverages. Once we get back together, we'll start with question number 2 and then follow that same process. Walk through, we'll have the table conversations and then the group reports back. After that's done, we'll make the call on whether or not we think we have time for questions. Thanks. So as a reminder, quick question two on the screen, and then we'll spend 15 minutes or so for the table conversations and report back by the table post. Maybe this time we'll go counterclockwise, so clockwise this time. So question number 2. Given the limits of the project, I'll explain that in just a minute, what are the key issues that should be addressed? And by the limits, it's the scope of, I think we mentioned earlier, as you see kind of that bluish line on the map, 4th Street on the west, the Bruce on the east, and basically MnDOT's right of way, building face to building face. So with that being the context of what this project area is, what are the issues within that zone that need to be addressed as part of this project? What are the concerns you have, your experiences out here, problems you see? That's what we'd like to hear from you. So, 15 minutes or so, and then we'll do the group conversation. Okay, let's come back to the group, and the team will have them come up.
You're on high
And we will start looking at sheets back on the whiteboard. We'll see what we start seeing. So, let's go. Mark, you want to start? We'll work our way counterclockwise around.
That's a good point.
These houses.
Okay. We had maintaining access during construction is important, particularly to businesses. Reducing confusion at the chicken foot.
Strikes again.
Improve motorist and pedestrian safety.
Does everybody probably knows the chicken foot, right? But that's. So make sure we're not, or might be wondering, what are they talking about? Oh, that's it. Okay, great. Nikki.
Great. The first one was speed at the curve and kind of to the east through the residential area. Higher speeds if you can reduce those. The bridge, the site issues at Marshall because of the bridge. We're talking about some solutions in terms of like a one-way for Marshall or access closure.
Okay.
Marshall. Talked about overall just access consolidation again. Can we remove some of the access to remove conflicts along the road for safety? Issues with the delivery vehicles parked on the road. Is there any other solutions for that? Sight lines at Main Street with the building, mostly on the southeast corner. That building causes some sight issues.
Safety, or do you want to do
Making sure there's proper drainage, that there's no city water in the travel lane, so they have to use the turn lane to get around it. And then boulevard, important kind of for snow storage. I think Jesse, you're up.
Yes, Jesse.
I'm a little disappointed that my stack was a little narrower, but we did have really good discussion, so.
Good.
Perfect. Remove on-street parking was the comment. Put back signal at Whitney.
Signal.
Limit the access at the Chicken's Foot.
There we go again.
Put parking in front of the armory. I think there's like that big grass area out there, there's a street that goes through there. One thing we need to be mindful of is environmental impacts, gas stations, laundromats. There's a bridge that goes from, I think it's called the Swans parking lot, or the parking lot right across from the Swans, little bridge there, make that handicap accessible. Include some kind of bike route. And as far as snow removal, you're always going to have some kind of issues with that. So we just came up with the idea of maybe having a good snow removal plan.
Okay. Excellent. So we've got sand, snow. Okay.
Okay, so one of the things our group talked about was looking at ways to control speed, particularly on the east side, kind of between where the signals are. Look at possibility of adding right turn and left turn lanes. Kind of was mentioned before, but maybe some possible road closures to improve safety. That West Marshall Street is a possibility there. So this is a little bit off the project, but are there opportunities for kind of supporting truck bypasses kind of permanently around town to help make those routes more attractive to truckers that are not coming through town? Just talk a little bit about kind of budget. Obviously, this is a large project, so being aware between the city and the state kind of budget concerns. One item was brought up to get a little bit off project, but kind of coordination with schools, crossing guard needs, keeping that on the radar. And then our group talked a lot about construction, kind of during construction issues, so making sure we have workable detours and keeping access to local businesses during construction. We talked about also during construction, the emergency services, making sure that they still have accessible routes, they're able to get where they need to around town. Also construction, I mean, is this a year-long construction? What is the staging going to be? Making sure we're keeping major crossings open so we're not impacting people more than we need to. And then we talked specifically about Whitney Street on the east side there, difficulties turning left onto Whitney, kind of the whole signal system, those kind of things.
Intersections. Good. Thank you, Suzanne. So Cody next.
All right, so we had some discussion on if there's two signals needed at Main Street and Lion Street, or if they could be split up a little bit. Along with that, then there was some discussion on the importance of having signalized intersections for head crossings. We had some discussion on the stoplight that was previously at Whitney Street. There wasn't really a strong opinion on whether it needs to be there or not, but just to review that again. There's some speed concern on the location from Marshall Street to the east, so the more residential area. General comment on making sure that we consider how aesthetics may affect the functionality of it and not to get some too much clutter or anything. A general discussion on utility needs and if there's an opportunity to get some buried power or other utility upgrades. And then lastly, alternate truck routes to try and get some of that truck traffic out of the downtown corridor.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Sandra next.
Well, everyone came up with a lot of good ideas because our table was nodding as they were listening to some that we didn't have, so it's kind of fun to listen to them. One was that the pavement be a smooth surface, the same as from, is it Bruce Street out to the bypass? That 4th Street, people are often confused that it's not a 4-way, it's only a 2-way. And then visibility issues would be at the curb and at Marshall. And everybody agreed on the Marshall one. Also pedestrian crossing at Whitney. Have good clear pavement markings, especially in snow and ice season. Another issue is that the lanes shift a little bit at Main Street. We want to make sure that the lane width and the number of lanes that are chosen avoid congestion throughout the corridor. And there's a lot of discussion about the chicken foot, traffic control. At the very least, that there's a lane designation for westbound right turn. And that it would be awesome to have a controlled pedestrian crossing or a bridge at Liberty Park for all of the residential area that needs to cross the highway.
Okay, we'll put that in. Jason?
Okay, minimize business impacts, keep the corridor open during construction and help the businesses out. No oversized overweight trucks through the corridor and minimize the truck traffic. Address intersection geometry at Main and College to better allow for truck movements. Remove left turns from Marshall Street onto College at the bridge because you can't see with the bridge guardrail.
So would you say it's more sight lines there or?
Wherever you put the other Marshall ones.
Access.
Access or sight lines. Could be either one.
Intersection.
That one I got already.
Okay, thank you.
Consider snow removal with the design because it kind of gets piled up pretty high. We had a vote for a roundabout at the Chicken Foot and also a vote for no roundabout at the Chicken Foot.
You got the bases covered on that one.
Update the traffic signals, some of the outdated ones with the new ones with the mast arms that don't hang over the road. Maintain sidewalk connectivity
Heads.
and keep the delivery vehicles off the road. Parking.
Oh, parking. Thank you, Jason. So you can see, I would say in question 2, we've got more categories, not quite as much grouping, but again, that's just fine. There are some common categories across questions, and that's fine as well. So a lot of good input. We are at shortly after 7. We promised to get people up by 7:30. I think what I'd like to do is we have the third question. The original plan was if we ran out of time, we'd just give you a card with a question on it. You could fill it out and send it back. I think we have enough time. Let's look at question 3. We are going to probably compress the kind of conversation on the tables, and the report backs will be fairly rapid fire, I think, just to, because we do want to get people out at 7:30. So question 3. What challenges might come our way during this project, and how might we address them? People understand that? Clear? Okay. Maybe about 10 minutes?
How do you address it? Pray. Here, have another piece of candy.
About 15 minutes left. We'll do kind of a quick version of the report back, and then Jean's got a couple of closing remarks to wrap up the evening. So let's start with about Suzanne this time. We'll work around back to Jessica.
So just a couple things we talked about, just if we do any access closures, maybe some upset people, so make sure to keep that in mind. Talked a little bit about, again, construction stuff, so if there's any temporary traffic control needs on our detour routes. Making sure, because there's a lot of construction to happen, that we're holding contractors accountable to get the job done once we get to construction. No excuses. Making sure we're keeping up good coordination between the city and the state, kind of utilities, those kind of things as we go along. And then with a limited construction season, maybe avoiding late season paving if we get to that point. Maybe you do gravel surface, leave it over winter, that kind of thing. That's kind of to force things along if we're not going to get things done.
Okay, great. Let's see, that brings us to code.
All right, so we talked about reaching out to those key stakeholders that would be in like the trucking industry. There was a lot of discussion of alternate routes. which I think is good for bike and peds, but there was also some discussion that, you know, they also employ a lot of people, and so making sure that, you know, we can accommodate those businesses is good as well. We talked quite a bit about the Armory intersection and just making sure that we're getting input from local places there, whether it be the Armory or Ruby's Pantry. And then also some discussion that a roundabout there could be controversial, so making sure that we can get ahead of that if at all possible.
This is a biggie.
Yeah, there are three items kind of all related to that Armory intersection.
Maybe no public notification / public input? Is everybody okay with that? Does that sound okay?
Seemed like there was a lot of discussion here about removing that signal at Whitney's, so there was some thought that MnDOT should explain why that was necessary, or as we move forward with the project, make sure that we're upfront about how that decision is made, whether there's going to be a signal there or not, or other crossing access.
Yep.
And then lastly, early outreach on detours, if they're known, and what roads would be closed, any of those construction access issues.
Great, thank you. Sandra?
Okay, so we talked a lot about access to homes and to the businesses, and wondered if you could work in smaller sections and limit the length of time working in each section, or maybe even keeping one lane open sometimes if that was possible. So that's these two. And then being mindful of the detour routes that are chosen, be respectful of the neighborhoods, and maybe reduce speed, have noise reduction signs, law enforcement patrols, and signage. Of course, there's talk about how long is this project going to take. Please be realistic up front and plan for the weather. And then along with that, communications, super important to set the correct expectations, provide updates, and notify about delays. And then the last one is in relation to the city portion of the project, will our taxes go up? Sorry, Jason.
Money.
Jason?
Council.
Okay. So Jason.
Number one challenge, weather. Business impacts came up again. That was a popular topic. Make sure that we do a lot of construction phasing and try to keep access available. Identify utility locations so there's nothing that gets hit and service isn't disrupted. Utility location. Communication throughout the project is probably the most talked about item at our table, making sure everybody's informed and using all methods available.
That's a common one.
And lastly, access for emergency services.
Okay. Mark.
We had weather during construction, providing good phasing, good planning, good options for local traffic movement on the city streets, and then concern about trucks with heavy loads using local streets as well. Next challenge was a design-related question, or design-related challenge. If a desire for bike lanes along the edge of the road gains some kind of popularity, sorting through the pluses and minuses associated with that could be a challenge. Access to businesses during construction, good planning, phasing, how would it be phased was a question, one season or two. And lastly, keeping the public informed during construction is really important. What roads are open or closed, when are they open or closed, when's it going to happen?
That one's definitely rising to the most common here. Nikki.
Right, so lots of things here. How long will construction be? Common. What will the cost be? And will there be city assessments on it? super ones. Traffic diversions, when the roads are closed. Is there ability to segment the construction in order to kind of help with business access and traffic kind of circulating around? Weather. Can we not have the same weather we had this spring? Construction done. Can anyone control the weather?
You're in charge.
Just, the concern about land use changes and, how we make decisions now, but when the land use changes, does that change how we might address things? And then Leroy was counting up how many old gas stations there were. He claims there were 6 between Main Street and the bridge, so contaminated soils may be something that we'll run into with that many.
The other way, at least 5 or 6 going in.
Another 5 or 6, okay.
Good. We'll wrap up with Jesse.
I got a couple of very similar items. Traffic flow detours, where? Make sure we are more. How will we access our homes or our businesses? Will it take more than one construction year? Maybe multiple years? Can it be done in segments? Aesthetics. Make sure it makes it Marshall,
Okay.
not like it's a freeway.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
another thing to consider is the impact on other roadways and developments. And then pedestrian and bike access during construction.
Pedestrian bike. There we go. Sure. That one's a little different, isn't it? Thanks, Jesse. Well, there you have it. I would invite people after we wrap up the meeting. Gene's got a couple of closing comments to come on up, take a look, get a closer look at what we've all said here tonight. Hand it over to Gene to talk about kind of a little bit what's next. I just like to thank everybody for your time tonight and the good input. So.
Yeah, thank you is certainly in order here. Also, too, I want to make sure I mention, and I talked about this earlier a little bit in that commitment, is we do want to make sure that we respond to you, let you know what the result of this is. We had a group meeting much like this earlier today. We have this one. We're going to have some online opportunities for comments and a poll, some survey work being done on that on the internet. And so we want to make sure that you're aware that that will be our next step in terms of this type of engagement. And I encourage you to offer that online survey. You'll find that at our website. I encourage you to offer that to your family and friends who couldn't be here and take part in this conversation, neighbors, business associates, whatever that might be. I encourage that. So we'll continue to take that feedback. That feedback, as well as what we've done here today, will be pooled. We'll pull that all together, and then we ask you to keep an eye on that website, and we'll be contacting you through the emails we've offered today to share what we've learned today and what we will be doing again in the future as we move forward. The website is a great resource. If you don't have that written down, we've got District 8 and future projects. Pretty easy to follow, so we hope to encourage you to do that. And so I guess finally, thank you again. I want to make sure and say thanks to our project team as well and our table hosts. This has been a really great event to hear from all of you. And again, thank you very much. And have a good evening. Have a piece of pizza if you'd like it. A lot of pizza. Thank you.